The city wasn't asleep, but at times it seemed deaf. Cars passed without looking at each other. Traffic lights changed even when no one was crossing. People walked with their eyes fixed on screens, as if the pavement beneath their feet no longer existed. Buildings lit up with hundreds of glowing windows, but almost all of them had the curtains drawn. In the middle of it all, Claire, newly 40, recently separated, mother to a daughter who now preferred to shut herself away with her headphones, had started feeling a daily ache she couldn't quite name. It wasn't sadness, not exactly loneliness either. It was something thicker, like a sticky sense of disconnection that settled under the skin. Claire lived in a central neighborhood of a city where rushing around was the only shared language and time the rarest commodity. Rows of flats, refurbished entrances, reinforced doors equipped with the latest security tech, the best protection money could buy, a real fortress. But at the same time, they were solid barriers between people on the same landing, silent guardians that had devoured with their access codes any real chance of being proper neighbors. She knew the couple next door were called Elizabeth and Joseph. She knew because it was written on their letterbox. Since being on her own, Claire had stopped watching television shows. She couldn't bear the characters who called themselves friends, who cried together, who shared their heartaches over glasses of wine, hits from the 1990s. She didn't have that. She had a sofa, an elderly cat, endless inner dialogues that always spiraled into loops and headaches, and a 13-year-old daughter with that freshly formed air of distance. Teenagers adopt when they begin to craft a language of their own, one that almost systematically excludes their parents. Sometimes Claire watched her from the half-open door, the room always dimly lit, posters taped up at odd angles, the phone nestled in her palm like a natural extension of her body. They didn't talk much lately. Their exchanges had boiled down to functional phrases. Have you had dinner? 5 more minutes. I can't find my hoodie. But what hurt the most wasn't the silence. It was the feeling that her daughter no longer looked at her the same way. Not like she used to when she asked for bedtime stories, or curled up beside her on the sofa with big, universe-sized questions. Now, whenever Claire tried to get close, her daughter would raise an invisible wall built from "It's nothing, leave me alone," or "I'm fine." And Claire, not wanting to be intrusive, not wanting to repeat anyone else's mistakes, would step back gently. But inside, she felt like someone knocking at a door, hearing movement on the other side, but no one ever opened. Until one perfectly ordinary Monday, Like any other, something tiny changed. After dropping her daughter off at her father's place, she took a shortcut along the riverside. It wasn't a route she usually took, too quiet, too empty. She generally avoided it, but the temperature was so pleasant that it invited her to walk. She strolled slowly, enjoying the feeling of not being expected anywhere. And then she saw it. A bench, freshly painted a striking blue. It gleamed against the city's grey backdrop, a rare splash of color, and on the backrest, written in black marker pen, "Sit down, I'm listening." Claire paused, looked around. No one. She sat down. Nothing happened. The bench wasn't magical. The sky stayed the same shade. No rainbows, no shooting stars, but something inside her sparked, as if someone had left her a secret note and was still nearby, watching from some hidden spot. The next day, she came back just to see if the bench was still there. It was. Same phrase. This time, as she sat down, something occurred to her. She pulled a pen blue, coincidentally from her bag, and with some hesitation, scribbled beneath the original message. Today I feel invisible. At first, she felt embarrassed, as if she'd confessed something aloud that wasn't meant to be heard, but she left it there and walked away. 2 days later, she returned. There were replies. "Me too. You are not. I'm here every Thursday at 6 p.m. From that moment, something shifted. Claire started dropping by more often. She read, she wrote. Sometimes she would leave a fresh flower from the riverside tucked between the bench slats. Sometimes she just sat and watched the few people passing by, imagining who they were, what they were like, what they might be feeling. The blue bench had become more than a place to sit. It was a crack, a chink in the armor so many people wore without even realizing, that kept them distant and disconnected. It was a place where someone, whoever it was, had decided that sitting down could be a way of reaching out. One Thursday, at 6 o'clock, she went, just out of curiosity. A woman was already sitting there, early 30s, fair skin, very curly hair. She had a book in her hand. When she saw Claire, she looked up and smiled. "Is it you?" Claire asked, not quite knowing what she meant. "Do you write on the bench too?" the younger woman replied. Claire nodded. She sat down beside her. They talked about the small things, the bench, the city, Claire's cat, the other woman's job in a library. They did not talk about their wounds, but they talked, and it felt comforting. Over the next few weeks, every time someone sat down, something new was written, phrases, verses, questions. Once, someone taped a drawing of a heart with stitches. Another time, an elderly woman left an envelope with a handwritten note inside. Thank you for listening without knowing. My son died 6 months ago, and this has been my first place without fear. Claire began saving those phrases, one by one, in her notebook little scraps of other people's stories. And without realizing it, she started looking at people again on the tube, saying good morning in the lift, leaving her phone at home when she went to visit the blue bench. One afternoon, while reading quietly, a young man approached her. Sorry, do you know who started all this? Claire shook her head. The boy shrugged. Doesn't matter, it's the most human thing I've experienced in months. He sat beside her. They didn't speak again, but they shared a comfortable silence, like two people listening to the same song through separate headphones. A month later, the bench was vandalized. Someone had scrawled all over it in black paint. Obscene drawings, insults. Claire saw it on her way home from work and felt a sting, as if something pure had been defiled, a space where she had felt connected, able to share something she had not found anywhere else. A few days later, she walked by again. Someone had cleaned it and repainted it blue, a deeper, richer shade than before. The message returned, this time larger. I'm still listening. She let out a quiet sigh of relief, and for a moment just sat there, feeling that something beautiful had been restored. It wasn't exactly like kintsugi, the Japanese art of mending broken pottery with gold, but to her the blue paint felt just as precious. The bench came back to life, a place to express, to connect, to dream, to relax, to chat, to fall in love, to reflect, to pause, to be present, here, now. It had become a symbol for the neighborhood, a symbol of connection, of openness, of feeling accompanied even when no one else was there, because each message, each drawing, each word was a piece of someone left behind with soul. Since then, Claire has gone every Sunday with a flask of coffee and a folding chair, just in case someone else needs space. She doesn't give advice, she doesn't impose, she listens. Sometimes they talk, sometimes they just sit together. She no longer feels disconnected. The world has not changed. She has not found a close-knit group of lifelong friends, but she has discovered that opening just a small space, a crack in the routine, is sometimes enough for someone, just one person, to step through. One afternoon, coming home, she saw her daughter on the sofa, phone in hand, her face glowing in the light of the screen. Without looking up, she murmured, "Where've you been?" Claire hesitated a second, then answered calmly, "A place where people still sit down," and added, as if it were nothing, "If you ever fancy coming, there's room for you too." She did not expect a reply, and did not get one, but her daughter paused the video for a moment. And that was enough. For now.